Hello, magnificent human beings. My name is Landon with Yoga New Mexico, where we focus on empowerment, alignment, and strength. You are in the right place, capable and strong. What are we going to do today? It is Wednesday, so it is time for our yoga education on Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, upward facing dog. Now, up dog and cobra are two different postures. So we're going to talk about the differences between those just a little bit to maybe clarify some misconceptions. And we're going to talk about how to do your up dog safely, and then might even make some jokes like, "What's up, dog?" So go ahead, roll out your mat, and I will roll the intro screen. Okay, so our upward facing dog. I think this pose gets overlooked so much in a yoga practice because it's typically part of that vinyasa flow thing, right? Down dog into plank, you do your chaturanga dandasana, and then you lower down into upward facing dog, and then you come back into plank or down dog, whichever one it is. So those are a lot of postures all linked together that make up this cool kind of flowy part of our yoga practice, right? Well, I think that up dog gets overlooked just in this process, and because those postures are linked together and they're so rote in our muscle memory and in our brains, is that we forget that they are individual postures as well. Now, also up dog, I think it's confused with cobra. So this is kind of, I think, just a pose that doesn't get talked about very much in our yoga practice, and so it would be good to examine it today. Let's first start off by talking about some of the basic differences between cobra and up dog. So cobra, you're on the mat. Hands are typically up farther in cobra rather than in up dog, because in cobra, you push into the mat. And cobra is really about a back bend. That is, there's two kind of forces happening in cobra: the back bend and the rooting that happens in cobra. So in cobra, you engage your glutes, so you're kind of forcing that pelvic bone into the mat. Not severely or tremendously, but that's kind of the grounding point in your cobra, is your pubic bone pressing into the mat. So you engage your glutes to allow that to happen, and you never lift that pubic bone off of the mat in your cobra, and you focus on gently pushing those hands into the mat so you can aid in your back bend. So those are kind of the points happening in our cobra. Arms are out a little bit farther typically than up dog, and then you push into the mat, engage your glutes, back bend, back bend, back bend. And that's typically our cobra. If I was more flexible in my back, then you would see me start to come back further and further and further and further. And typically the more warmed up you are, the further you can come back. Now in up dog, hands are back closer. So I've heard, thumbs in line with your nipples or hands next to your pecs. Wherever it is, they need to be close in toward your rib cage and kind of your pec area. So hands down and back, roll your shoulders back, and then you lift on up. So you'll notice the difference that my shoulders are over my wrists just a little bit here. Feet pressed into the mat, hips lift off, eye gaze up, glutes engaged, heart open, legs are active. Brief Balasana, child's pose, to balance things out. So in your up dog, there's a lot of things going on. So hopefully that kind of clears the confusion between Cobra and up dog. Now, if you're going through a vinyasa flow and you're not really feeling an up dog and you want to substitute Cobra, I think that's fine. Go ahead, you know. It's just whatever you feel you need to do in your practice. But specifically, upward facing dog is what we're talking about today. So another part of up dog, I think teachers make this mistake a lot too, is that new teachers especially, because they're trying to think of the next thing to say as they're going through their practice, they'll whip everybody through the vinyasa portion, you know, and then they get to up dog and they leave people in upward facing dog for way too long. And this is a sensitive area for a lot of people because it targets the low back. So if you're a teacher and you're watching this and you're starting off your class, don't leave people in up dog, please, for too long. Put them in it and then gently move them out. But then it's kind of like the push and play, right? The push and pull, because, well, you want to be able to talk intelligently about the pose, but you don't want to leave them in there for too long. So use your discretion. Nonetheless, the main point is that upward facing dog can be a sensitive area for the low back. And there's a lot of similarities between upward facing dog and our camel pose, Ustrasana. And a couple episodes ago, I talked about camel and how a good mantra to have is inhale, heart open, exhale, back bend, inhale, heart open, exhale, back bend. And the reason for this is because you don't want to collapse into that low back. So you see this a lot in up dog in classes, are people just kind of collapsing into their low back rather than lengthening out of that low back. So shining your heart is definitely part of your up dog. Active feet into the mat. Please do not tuck your toes. Leave them untucked. Active legs pressing into the mat. Engage your glutes. That helps to protect your low back. Shoulders roll back. Eye gaze lifts. And breathe into your low back. Shine your heart. Come on back. Something that's important to say in your up dog as well is we give that tip of engage your glutes, which is good because that will protect your low back and it helps you to kind of not collapse into your low back. But here's the inherent problem with most cues in yoga is that a teacher says them, the student hears them and says, okay, engage my glutes. And then 100% of their strength, they're squeezing their glutes so hard that they're forgetting about everything else. Don't squeeze your glutes that hard. 20%, 30%. You're going to notice this. In your next practice, stay in your up dog for just a little bit longer and then play with how much you're engaging your glutes or not. You're going to notice that it's kind of proportionate to how much tension you have in your low back. So think about it in between, 15 to 20% is how much you should just engage your glutes. Because if you do it too much, it actually starts to become, I think, counterproductive. Lots of little things happening, right? Growing out of that low back and shining your heart, and eye gaze lifts in your up dog as well. And please, after an up dog, after taking a few breaths in your upward facing dog, come back into child's pose because it's a nice counter stretch to kind of alleviate everything you have going on in your up dog. And Balasana, child's pose, bring it on back. So those are some tips, some things, some tricks to pay attention to in your up dog during your next class. Try to not engage your glutes to 100%, 15 to 20, because you do want to protect that low back. Remember, you have active legs into the mat. You lift your heart, you roll your shoulders back, your eye gaze comes up. And really just listen to your body. As always, that is the best advice that I can give you. So thank you all so much for being here. And as always, you are a magnificent human being. You are in the right place, capable and strong. From my heart to all of yours, namaste.